Adrian?
Well, the reason we've set this show up is because the payments industry for me is about reducing friction and creating better opportunities for everybody so that all boats can rise. And both of these gentlemen very much lead in a way that embraces four wins: winning for the industry, winning for consumers, winning for customers, winning for their companies, but most of all, winning for the people who work with them, and then finally, then winning for themselves. So without further ado, I wonder if, Keith, you could tell us what your current role is and what your position is in the payments industry.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I've been working in the payments industry for 30 years now. The role I currently have is I'm the CEO of VocalLink Limited, which is a provider of payment technology for critical national infrastructure here in the UK.
Thank you. Thank you. Anand.
Cool. Yeah. Firstly, thank you very much for having this podcast. So I don't know what number podcast it is, but I do want to make note, Adrian, that I was your first guest on your very first podcast. And my esteemed colleague, who's also in shot, wasn't, right? So that's very important for me to mention, especially at this point in time. Yeah, my name is Anand Patel. My role is CEO of Fabric UK. Fabric is a European open finance payment platform processing tens of billions of euros. And our true belief is around an open finance embedded ecosystem that allows people to actually and companies to grow their businesses. So very much an orchestration layer with significant number of payments underneath it, live in many countries, and I get the honor of being the UK CEO.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just on that point of order, this is actually the 50th episode, and I couldn't think of two other people I'd wanted on the show. Now, this is an experiment as well, because I've never had a panel on here, so I'm going to try and guide this to the best of my ability, but probably I already know I've got no hope of doing that. But Anand, I think this is your third appearance, so just to confirm that for everybody, which I think you hold the record now.
Do you mind confirming? I was the first person, right?
You were the first, I think, the second, the 28th, the 29th, and the 87th. So come on.
All that matters when Keith is on this call.
Brilliant.
Well, I'm very honoured to be on the 50th, Adrian, and equally, if not more honoured to be on it with Anand.
Wonderful, wonderful, brilliant. We're obviously going to have some fun today, but I wonder if I could go into this. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of working with yourselves, with your teams, and if I can start with you, Anand, there's one thing that stood out for me about your leadership mantra, which is that behaviours drive culture and culture drives results. You've been renowned for creating significant growth across this. Everybody wants results and growth, but you believe there's a couple of steps before that. So I wonder if you could just share with us why, first of all, that is a mantra of yours.
Okay, great. Yes, and I've had the joy and pleasure of working for Keith, and I've learned a lot from Keith. And one of those key areas definitely is around being a servant leader. So my behaviors drive culture, culture drives results. It's the foundations for everything I've ever executed and delivered in the 20 years that, or 25 years I've been in the payment industry. And I do truly believe being a servant leader is the driver of sustainable results. I believe that culture is everything. I'm curious, right? I'm an extremely curious person. I care about people. And it truly is the foundation of how I think. So it's about a people-driven future. And that's why I've always said behaviors is the key element to actually success. So, and the final bit is I enjoy it. I enjoy making sure that I turn up every day as I promise I will do, and actually believing and doing my behaviors. I want to have fun all the time. I want to make sure that the team are having fun. I want to make sure we're delivering on our goals, because actually you've only got one life to live, right? So it's important for me on that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Keith, we've had the pleasure of working together with a number of your teams as well. And I think your mantra is best summed up with that leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. Can you share with us why that matters so much to you and is your sort of North Star as a leadership guide?
Yeah, of course, Adrian. And obviously that's a quote from Simon Sinek that I hold dear to heart. Yeah, I think one of the great privileges of working and working with others is when you have the opportunity and the responsibility of leading them. Simon also talked about leadership as a service to be given, and it's one that I hold dear to heart, and something that has, and not use the word curious, but at a very early kind of stage in my career, I was curious as to how people got the best out of other people, and I've worked with some great people over the years. And really, I feel a couple of things that's important around that quote. One is, and maybe something we'll talk about later, but core to what core to me is recognizing. It's in fact, it's an Oscar Wilde quote: "Be yourself; everyone else is taken." So,
Yeah.
bringing what you can to the table is paramount, and a leader's job is to ensure that his team or her team can bring themselves to the table and get the best out of them. And I get great satisfaction, great joy, sometimes challenge in doing that, but it's what motivates me, what excites me, and it's certainly something that has been key to every opportunity or role I've had is the ability to work with, support, and lead others.
Excellent. So, Anna, if we can move to what does it actually mean to you? If you break that down to behaviors drive culture and culture drives results, I wonder if we could hone in on the, results. For me, the implication is that there's two things that precede results. So what does it mean to you about behaviors and also culture? I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about the what of those.
Sure. So the way I look at it is trust is the ultimate currency. And I believe within behaviors, it is actually very, very, very important that without trust, teams stall, right? With trust, they unlock the exponential benefit and performance. And behaviors is how you turn up every day. Behaviors is really what matters the most in what you want to do and how you do it.
Yeah.
So I have this real belief in that if we all behave in the right, ethical, important way for a business, if the value set is strong, then we're actually going to deliver. And actually, one of the most important things is behaviors actually drive before strategy, right? So in the sense of strategy is very important. We all know how important strategy is, but behaviors will determine if that actually comes to life, right? If people are there, and it's actually about the consistency and the clarity around that. I believe a team is better than not in that sense. And again, as most of you know, I'm a Leicester City supporter. We won the league a number of years ago, and Arsenal haven't won it since, by the way, Adrian. And that was a team. That was a team that worked together, knew exactly what they had to do. They trusted each other, and we won the league by 10 points over Arsenal that year. It was the only time ever in my career I'll ever see it. But I go back to that story and that saying that everyone knew what they had to do.
Yeah.
Everyone knew how they had to behave. Everyone trusted everybody else to do their job. But more importantly, they trusted each other to know that we're not good at everything. I do also want to make a comment, Adrian, is Keith did mention that he's worked with some great people, but he didn't mention my name, which is, of course, I might have a little cry afterwards. That's the behavior I will show because I'm actually determined and love that man, right? That's the importance of it.
Brilliant. Just on that front, anybody who's not a football fan or not a Leicester City fan, you used this once where you said that it was 5,000 to 1. I remember being on an offsite with you, and you pointed to the team and you said, "There's more chance of Elvis walking in the door behind us than Leicester City." So some staggering things genuinely can be achieved with great teamwork.
Yeah.
So, Keith, what does it mean for you then about taking care of those in your charge rather than being in charge? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means a number of different things, Adrian, and I think it kind of starts a little bit with what you bring to the table as an individual, and kind of what I'm rooted in, and this is something obviously I have had the opportunity to experience over time, and as I said before, working with some fabulous people, including an aunt, along the way, and I think about it I think about a team having an edge, a team having a manifesto, and a team having rules of the road. But in order for that team to have those kind of three components, you need to understand what each of you bring. And part of the job of a leader is to understand that, bring that out, and help shape it. Very much like the analogy Anant used around Leicester City. And this, as you can probably see over my shoulder, I am an Arsenal supporter, hence Anant's references. But I have a funny feeling that the tide has turned, and we will demonstrate some silverware this year, or at least this season. No, but back to what I was saying in terms of edge, manifesto, rules of the road. And these really, for me, are ways in which individuals bring their authentic self to a team, and a way a leader needs to create an environment. Again, and I don't use the word trust, and I think trust is paramount to any kind of operating culture or team culture. But creating that environment so that you get the best out of yourself, but you get the best out of the team. Again, another Simon quote in that I often use is "Together is always better," and that very much has been the case with me. So all of this really, as a leader, taking care of those individuals in my charge, is to making sure they have a voice, and that their voice is the best version of them. Clearly, they want to learn and develop. How you support that, but of course, one of the great kind of learning melting pots is working with others, being part of that team, and understanding, how you can contribute to it, as well as how others can get the best out of you. And my job really is like a conductor of an orchestra, trying to ensure that the parts of that orchestra understand the roles they play, understand how they create that music, and that music is the sum of parts.
Adrian, I'd love to just chip in there and actually say, Keith, when I worked for you for a number of years, I can put my finger on what you actually did that made it good for me. You made it psychologically, it was already physically safe for everybody working MasterCard, right? But you made it psychologically safe for me to be me, and for everyone in the team to be themselves, which obviously said you were open to being challenged on your thoughts. You were very open, and you didn't take it in any other way other than constructively to grow. And I love it. And that's the belief I have. And actually, Keith, yourself and your predecessor as a boss was Carol Cosby, as you know, who I work for and love to bits. I can put my finger on what you guys really make, and that is the team environment is a safe environment. And that safe environment allowed people to have voices. And so I look at that and say, that's what I want to mirror wherever I am all the time, in work and out of work.
Yeah, but I think fundamental to that is creating, you said it, Nant, creating an environment that enables, facilitates, encourages trust, and that's key. And if a leader can do that, I can help do that, then you're on a path to success. And I do feel I need to give some credit to Anant in terms of how he does that. Part of it is his conviction, but also his energy and his enthusiasm is infectious, as I'm sure you can gather from this podcast. No, but how that lifts and brings others, and encourages others, and kind of motivates and inspires others to bring that best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, what a compliment there for you. And it's so this word trust, I think we're in an industry, well, I know we're in an industry that is built on trust. Without trust, payments doesn't exist. Even when I buy a coffee, I'm trusting, as is the merchant, that my bank is going to pay for that, £6.20 or whatever a coffee costs these days, or whatever. But if I just come back here, first of all, Keith, for you, what does trust mean to you?
I kind of look at it in maybe a slightly unusual way, but I don't think it's that unusual, particularly when I articulate it. I think of trust in the context of team and leadership, about what I call my manifesto. I kind of mentioned it in passing when you asked me that first question. And for me, trust is about, there's different ways in which obviously an individual encourages or inspires or enables trust amongst a group of people. But I think a lot of it is down to what Anand said earlier: behaviors, how they show up, how they interact. And as a kind of a leader, I think about it in a number of different ways. I think about it in, making sure that as a leader, I encourage and embrace the kind of diversity of thought and action across the team. So I think about it in the context of doing the right thing is never the wrong thing. I think about it in the context of helping strive to help each other, because it drives better outcomes. I think about having, as Anand talked again a little earlier, about having a deep-rooted purpose. Why are we here? What it is we're here to do? What is it that I contribute to that? And making sure that the team understands it. I also, as a leader, in terms of trust, trying to think about it as everyone gets an A. So my job is to help facilitate that, but it's also help facilitate getting that A star in A level terms, or distinction maybe in university terms. So what's the bit that I can do to help that individual be better than their expectation of themselves? And for me, that is what encapsulates trust as an individual or as a leader, is helping others operate in an environment like that, and helping others encourage to operate as leaders. Because at the end of the day, you can have a lot of process, but ultimately trust is about people, and it's about people respecting and honoring that respect amongst themselves, whether that's with colleagues in the team, colleagues in the organization, customers, or other stakeholders.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, Adrian, just to add to what Keith says, trust to me is very similar to what Keith is saying as well, which is create the environment, right? Create the environment where people believe in my integrity, right? And they believe in my integrity, that I'll support them, whatever they do, right? I want them to feel empowered in everything they do. I want them to feel safe in everything they have. And that trust is there, that actually you can pick the phone up to me at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's the Ajay Banga comment I heard once, where he wants to build an environment where someone actually feels brave enough to say they could pick the phone up to me at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I need your help. And you get that trust and you have that element, then there is the decency quotient around it. And actually, I think about that quite regularly. I'd be mortified, and Simon Sinek says this, I'd be mortified if someone didn't feel they could pick the phone up to me if they needed that within my team. So I want to create it so that everybody feels that the trust is there, no matter what it is, good, bad, indifferent. You have the ability to pick the phone up because actually I'm there to support and help and make things happen. And that's really important. I want to be fully transparent about that.
And maybe just to continue the kind of bridge from what Anand said there, but also kind of continue the football theme that Anand introduced a little earlier. And it's a quote that it's from a guy called Walt Whitman, but Ted Lasso used it in one of his episodes, and that really is as a leader. And this is what trust is about, I think, as a leader, is be curious and not judgmental. And I think good leaders, or at least smart leaders, are curious, and they create an environment or an atmosphere that allows curiosity to pervade, and ensures that people respect, and while they may have views and opinions, they don't pass judgment, not until they've expressed or at least inquired in a curious way as to why an individual may think that way, want to behave that way, or want to take that action.
Yeah.
There's one thing I've noticed particularly for both of you, is that doing the right thing might not always get you the right result, but it's always the right thing to do. It's never the wrong thing to do. And I will pay you a fairly significant compliment here. I remember a number of years ago, unfortunately, in a situation where you had to make a number of people redundant. Yeah. which is something that was amongst the most difficult things you've ever had to do in your life. The thing I remember, though, was you personally actually being involved in all the exit interviews. Yep. Getting the best packages you could for the exiting people. But then more importantly than that, committing to do everything you could within your network to actually enable those people to do and to get the next role. Not many leaders do that. There's many people do that. Where does that come from to be able to, that involved you having 2 70-odd hour weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you, Adrian. Appreciate the compliment. And I think it comes back down to my values and my behavior set, right? And it comes down to, I care for everyone. I want us to live in a harmonious world. I want us to live in a world where everyone feels safe. I want to live in a world where everyone feels happy. And maybe it's a pipe dream. Maybe it's something that's actually up there in the clouds and the skies. But whatever I can do to help positively impact thousands of people in my life, I'd love to do it. And I think it comes from the fact is, it is the decent thing to do. So redundancies are never a great thing. I mean, I hate it, and I'll hate it every time I do it.
Yeah.
And at that time, I believe, Adrian, the one you talk about, there was 20 plus people that I had to, unfortunately, do the right thing for the business and for the individuals. And whatever I could do to help them secure their future was paramount and probably at the very highest bit of my list, because these people have families. There's more important things to do and everything. So the element comes from, I think it's just DNA'd into me from a child when my dad would do the same, and I've said this story and I know both of you have heard it, but I grew up, my dad was the bank manager. My dad opened all the Bank of Indias in the UK, right? So he launched it. He was everything. He was a senior member of the Bank of India. And back in the late 70s, early 80s, and I know I look too young, but I was born in the 70s, that we used to have a lot of people come to our house for dinner. And that was because back then it was probably less known to go out for dinner and take clients out. But we had every nationality, every culture, everything walk into our house, have dinner with us. And I grew up realizing that actually that's the right way forward. I love seeing people and I'm curious. So I think from that moment onwards, I've always had this love and energy for people. So I think it just comes from my DNA of take care of others, others will take care of you. And it's just a big belief, but I feel good for it. I feel good for being a giver. And if I can help anybody, I would do as much as I can.
Amazing.
Yeah, maybe can I just add there, paying a compliment to Anand. One of the things that I think is really important as a leader is to lead. I know it sounds obvious, but many people are leaders and they don't necessarily choose to lead, or their definition of leading can be different to for example, mine. But I think it's really important that you do lead because first and foremost, you get then to choose the narrative that defines you and your leadership style, and that's what Anand has done. Anand's DNA is as he's described. He is very focused on team. He's very focused on the individual and supporting them, irrespective of the situation or circumstance. But that's what he's become known for, and rightly so. And that's what defines him as a leader, and it's what helps position him relative to others in that sense. And again, back to where you started around leadership, I would encourage people to be clear about what defines them as a leader, and then do their best with the support of others to lead in that way.
Wonderful. Jens, I feel like we could talk about this subject genuinely all day with true life examples. And what I admire about both of you is your words and deeds match. You know how important integrity is to me. And I think I've seen that play out a number of times with both of you. Keith, I wonder if you could just share something where you've had to do the right thing, even though it's uncomfortable.
I think I do that most days because it doesn't always feel that
Sorry,
comfortable.
I was about to say, apart from every single day.
Yeah, I think it's back to something I said earlier around being clear about your values or your principles, and then doing your damnedest to stick to them. Albeit that can be challenging, as you've just pointed out. It's sometimes easier to take a different path than the right path, or the harder path. But I guess there's a couple of things I'd say. One is, and listen, there's countless examples where I'm tested, but I do always ask myself, do I think what I'm about to do, is that the right thing, or the right thing as I see it, or I judge it? And more often than not, it is, or more often than not, you've got a question mark, right? And therefore, you use the team to help you navigate, by either giving you perspective, giving you opinion, giving you a view. But ultimately, there comes a point where you have to make a decision, and you have to be comfortable as you can be with that choice. And that's what I certainly strive to do. But I don't sit and make those decisions in a dark room by myself. I use the power of people, and the power of perspective, and the power of other people's judgment, and the power of curiosity, the power, to try and ultimately shape and make that decision. But what's really important is, as a leader, is you make the decision. At the end of the day, you don't not do it because it's too hard, or it's too difficult, or it's too uncomfortable. Much in the way that Anand described some of the situations, difficult situations he's had. But ultimately, you've got stakeholders to manage. You've got your team, you've got your business, you've got your other stakeholders, and it's about trying to get the right decision by all of those stakeholders, which is a difficult thing to do.
Okay. Well, this is the point where I try and bring together and just make some salient points, but I think that there's so many there. So I just wonder if I could share with both of you the most prominent elements that come in there for me.
Yeah.
I think the big takeaways for me about the value of collaboration within a team, and people creating the psychological safety so people can show up authentically themselves. I'm also hearing that having that voice, but also the value of that voice and different voices within that team is fundamental. And actually, that is what makes the team work. Curiosity is at the foundation of both of your leadership styles and approaches. But the most significant word for me was trust. Trust can mean different things to different people, but essentially, I think it means that you value people, you value their behaviors, you value what shows up. I think the other interesting component for me, though, was that about doing the right thing, which is that leadership isn't, we can have these self-reflections about what type of leader we would like to be, and all leadership starts with self-awareness, as we know, but then it gets tested. Yeah. And every theory is great until it's actually tested. And it's interesting with Keith, I did want to frame that question to you, apart from every single day, how do you show up and do the right thing? But that is tested significantly. And Anand as well, in a number of circumstances I've seen in the time we've known each other, where you've been tested and you've come out doing these are uncomfortable. But I think the interesting thing for me, though, is I still think those mantras that you both have, Keith, with leadership is not about being in charge, and just taking the authority without taking the responsibility. That's the one that comes from me, and something that I've always admired about how you show up like that. And Anand, for you, the exceptional growth results you and your teams have been able to achieve are the direct results of having the right culture, having one where people matter and psychological safety happens, and then showing up, starting with yourself each day. How are you going to show up each day, and how are you going to improve, and what are you going to look like as a leader? So they were my takeaways from that.
Maybe I could add two things, Adrian. One is that's a very impressive summation of the conversation we just had. You are better than most versions of AI, I can certainly tell you, when it comes to your ability to summarize and play back.
Is there a compliment there?
But secondly, just continuing the football theme, and I think this sums up Anand, and I think sums up me. or at least how we operate, and at least through one lens. And there's a very famous Arsenal football player who has since passed, David Rocastle, who said something very important that I've kept close to heart, and that is, remember who you are, where you're from, and what you stand for. And I think if you do remember those three things and do try and apply them in the workplace or with your friends, then you're going to go to a reasonable place, I think.
Definitely.
Just share those again, Keith. Who you are,
where you're from, and what you stand for.
Brilliant. Who you are. Brilliant. Love that. Love that. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much indeed. Anna, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was perfect. I agree with Adrian with Keith when I was listening to your summation. That was a really good snapshot of the conversation. And you're right, trust is at the heart of everything. I truly believe it.
Excellent. Excellent.